Cream-white flames filled one's eyes within this spacious hall. Many fire-human figures stood straight-backed in this nearly 10,000-foot-large square hall. They did not emit any sounds, but an extremely terrifying aura saturated the hall. That aura merged together and transformed into a large fire dragon that lingered over the heads of these fire-human figures. There was a killing intent surging from it. Xiao Yan's group studied the formation in this hall from a corner. Xiao Yan's brows were involuntarily knit. This was not the first time he had seen such a situation. Ever since they had entered that large door, Xiao Yan's group had charged through 3 halls similar to this, but the further they progressed, the fire slaves they faced became stronger. Based on the senses of Xiao Yan's group, every single one of these fire slaves in front of them possessed a dozun strength. One dozun was not worth mentioning in the eyes of Xiao Yan's group, but when this number increased to 10,000, even an elite dosheng would have to brace their attention, especially when these fire slaves cooperated with each other perfectly. Their combined strength was extremely frightening. Elder Gu, when will we reach the end if we continue charging on like this? Xiao Yan frowned and involuntarily asked. Even though their group was quite strong, the do qi within their bodies would be exhausted sooner or later if they continued charging through these endless halls. The natural energy within this realm was mixed with the demon flame. No one dared to simply absorb it. Even an elite dosheng would not be able to endure if one's exhaustion was greater than one's intake. We have no other choice. The demonic flame realm has become an extremely dangerous place after being managed by the purifying demonic lotus flame for thousands of years. Otherwise, others would not have failed to capture it during these thousands of years. Gu Nanhai shook his head and replied. Xiao Yan's frown deepened upon hearing this reply, but he also felt helpless. This demonic flame realm was far too strange. After charging to the next place, the previous place would strangely disappear. It seemed as though there was a large invisible hand quietly removing the places behind them, forcing them to head forward. Did those ancestors from your clan also break through all these obstacles when they had come to this place in the past? Xiao Yan asked. Yes. Is the purifying demonic lotus flame stronger 1,000 years ago, or is it stronger now? Xiao Yan's eyes flashed as he asked. Ugh, although the purifying demonic lotus flame 1,000 years ago was not captured by anyone, it still suffered a serious injury, but 1,000 years is more than enough time for it to fully recover. Moreover, from the looks of the nightmare heavenly fog, the current purifying demonic lotus flame is stronger. Gu Nanhai hesitated for a moment before responding. So it's like this. Xiao Yan lifted his head and looked at the dome above the large hall. His eyes slightly flickered. It seems like this purifying demonic lotus flame is planning to play with us like dolls. Everyone knit their brows after hearing these words. Being played with by a heavenly flame was really something that was difficult to accept. Let's continue to walk. Xiao Yan mused for a moment, after which he gently waved his hand. His voice had regained its cool. Everyone was startled upon hearing this command. They quickly nodded as their bodies moved and attacked at the same time. The group easily crushed the fire slave army in the hall in an instant, after which all of them turned into light figures that appeared at the end of the hall in a couple of flashes, after which they destroyed another large door and entered it. They continued this bitter attempt to overcome the obstacles during this subsequent period of time, but the tasks were extremely monotonous. Each large hall had the same fire slaves. The only difference was that the strength of the fire slaves increased the further they ventured. In the last clash, even Ancestor Hua Yun had suffered some minor injuries while fighting the fire slave army. Although the rest were slightly better, their expressions had gradually become grave. Their continuous charges was little different than having clashed with many elite doshengs, causing them feel exhausted.
Bang!
The enormous door of the hall was shattered by the expressionless Xiao Yin with a palm strike. Another large hall appeared as the stone fragments shot out. Everyone felt a weariness in their hearts the moment they saw the large hall. They did not know how long it would take for these various obstacles to come to an end. Huh. Xiao Yan's eyes swept over the large hall. However, he quickly emitted a huh sound because he discovered that this large hall was not packed with fire slaves. Have we passed through all the obstacles? Sun Er also discovered the change.
No.
Gu Nanhai shook his head. His eyes were locked on something in the middle of the large hall. There was a somewhat skinny figure standing at that spot. Strangely enough, no flame lingered around his body. Both of his eyes were tightly shut as a mountain-like aura spread from his body. 4-star Dosheng. Gu Nanhai's and Zi Yan's bodies gently trembled at this moment. A grave expression slowly surged onto their faces. Although the two of them were also 4-star Doshengs, that skinny figure in the hall was still a little stronger than them. Is this also a fire slave? Xiao Yin asked in disbelief. Just how terrifying was this purifying demonic lotus flame? It was able to turn a 4-star Dosheng into a fire slave? He can barely be considered a fire slave since he possesses an intelligence that belongs to him. Compared to those fire slaves that are controlled by the purifying demonic lotus flame, he possesses his own autonomy. Gu Nanhai spoke with a grave expression. Looks like this is the final hurdle. We should be able to reach the location of the purifying demonic lotus flame once we pass through this. This won't be easy. Xiao Yin frowned as he remarked. Even with their lineup, it would not be easy to defeat a 4-star Dosheng. There is no way to retreat now that we have come here. Ziyin spread her hands as she spoke to Xiao Yin, after which her pretty eyes looked to Gu Nanhai as she spoke in a somewhat lazy tone. The two of us should attack together and finish him off as soon as possible. I am completely irritated. Gu Nanhai did not reject her suggestion. He understood that it would be difficult for him alone to deal with this skinny man. Pay attention to the surroundings. Xiao Yin gently waved his hand as everyone quietly rushed into the hall. They separated and surrounded the skinny human figure. Ziyin and Gu Nanhai landed in front of that man. That human figure's tightly shut eyes slowly opened when everyone landed within the large hall. A pair of dark black eyes that were void of emotion were revealed, but they clearly contained an additional liveliness compared to the fire slave they had met earlier. Nevertheless, those eyes were still icy cold. Both of his eyes merely stared at Ziyin and Gu Nanhai in front of him. Neither party spoke, but the atmosphere had become more tense. Xiao Yin only managed to get a good look at this skinny human figure after approaching him. The skinny figure was wearing ordinary clothes, and his face seemed to be completely stiff. There was no discernible expression on his face. Both of his eyes were cold and indifferent, appearing like ice that had not melted in 10,000 years.
Bang!
The ground of the quiet hall suddenly trembled as the skinny figure gently clenched the empty space in front of him. A strange 10-foot-large blood-red axe appeared out of nowhere. This skinny figure appeared a little comical beneath the outline of that giant axe. The people present could clearly sense the terrifying energy the skinny figure hid. This person is really powerful. Xiao Yan's expression was grave. He would never have imagined that such an expert could be controlled by the purifying demonic lotus flame. Gu Nanhai frowned as he looked at the giant blood-colored axe. It seemed as though he was thinking of something. Both parties did not say anything unnecessary after the blood-colored axe appeared. 3 pairs of eyes glanced at each other. Wild wind suddenly blew as 3 figures brutally collided together. The earth-shaking ripple that erupted caused Xiao Yan's group to hurriedly pull back. Clang clang. The 3 figures in the large hall flashed with dazzling speeds. Sparks continued to shoot out as the 3 figures flashed and appeared. The unusually strong hull began to crack an inch at a time. Many crack lines began to spread. Xiao Yan's group had already withdrawn by a great distance. They were in no position to interfere as the three elite Doshungs exchanged blows. Just the remnant ripples caused them to feel awed. Even with Zi Yin and Gu Nanhai's combined attacks, that skinny figure holding the large blood axe did not give in. The large axe danced like the wind as a bloody scent spread across the hall. Although he was powerful, Zi Yin and Gu Nanhai were not ordinary people either. The skinny figure gradually fell into a disadvantage as the fight continued. However, his occasional retaliation still caused Zi Yin and Gu Nanhai to appear a little miserable. If it was a one-on-one fight, these two individuals would be no match for this mysterious person. Clang! The three figures suddenly made contact in the middle of the large hall. A frightening sound swept apart like a huge wave. The figure with the blood axe staggered and flew backwards. His feet stomped against the ground of the large hall, forming over a dozen deep pits. Roar! That skinny figure's indifferent eyes suddenly revealed a crazy heat after being forced back. A low roar was emitted from his throat as a powerful light suddenly shot out of his brow. A symbol slowly appeared in front of everyone's eyes as the skinny person's aura suddenly soared. Xiao Yan's eyes immediately paused on this strange symbol, after which he seemed to have been struck by lightning as his face became dull. This is Xiao Clan's clan tattoo? The symbol that appeared on the person with the blood axe was the unique clan tattoo of the Xiao clan. Why did this person possess the Xiao clan's clan tattoo? Xiao Yan's eyes were stunned as he studied the clan tattoo on the forehead of the skinny figure. A great storm seemed to have risen within his heart. Under normal circumstances, he should be the only person within the current Xiao clan that possessed such a clan tattoo. Why had it suddenly appeared on this mysterious person? Xiao clan's clan tattoo? Sun Er's group had also discovered this tattoo. Their stunned eyes were thrown to Xiao Yin. All of them had seen Xiao Yin use the Xiao clan's clan tattoo. Hence, they were extremely familiar with this thing. Could it be an ancestor of the Xiao clan?
Sun gusset.
Xiao Yan's heart shook upon hearing this suggestion. This purifying demonic lotus flame had existed for a long period of time. If one were to trace its history, it had existed far longer than the Xiao clan had. It was not impossible for this flame to have captured an expert from the Xiao clan during that era. Some joy involuntarily rose within Xiao Yan's heart, but this joy had just risen when it gradually sank. This skinny man seemed to have become a fire slave of the purifying demonic lotus flame.
Bang!
The skinny man, whose aura had soared, suddenly swung his axe forward while those thoughts were lingering in Xiao Yan's heart. A frightening wind instantly tore through the air and hacked into Zi Yin and Gu Nanhai's energy barrier. Crack! The energy barrier was like being curled in front of this frightening attack that could slash through the sky and the land. The barrier was quickly shattered. Zi Yin and Gu Nanhai inside seemed to have suffered heavy blows. Their expressions turned pale as they staggered dozens of steps back. Each of their steps left behind a half-foot-deep footprint. Roar! That skinny man did not stop after forcing back Zi Yin and Gu Nanhai with his axe. His body moved, and he appeared above the two of them. That strange blood-colored axe emitted a sizzling sound as it cut through empty air. It was accompanied by a destructive force as it immediately hacked toward Zi Yin and Gu Nanhai. While the large axe was slashing down, Xiao Yan's eyes were rapidly flickering as he stood a short distance away. He suddenly clenched his teeth before his body flashed. His body then appeared in front of Zi Yin and Gu Nanhai. At the same time, a clan tattoo swiftly surfaced on his brow. Buzz! The enormous blood-colored axe rapidly magnified in Xiao Yan's eyes, but when the blood-colored axe was half a foot from Xiao Yan, it suddenly stilled. The corpse-like face of the skinny man, with his unusually cold and indifferent expression, finally revealed a fluctuation. Looking at the large blood-colored axe suspended above his head, Xiao Yin sighed in relief in his heart, appearing as though he had been relieved of a great burden. The fire lotus floating on his palm under his sleeve quietly scattered. He raised his head. His eyes stared at the face of the skinny man, who appeared at a loss. The skinny man appeared to be remembering something. Xiao Yin cupped his hands together and spoke in a deep voice. "May I know the name of this elder? I am Xiao Yin, a member of the Xiao clan." Xiao clan? A ripple immediately rose within the skinny man's lost eyes after hearing this term. He looked at Xiao Yin in front of him. Gradually, a mysterious connection slowly surfaced in his heart. This familiar feeling was the taste of a bloodline. You are a member of the Xiao clan?" The skinny man opened his mouth. A hoarse voice was finally emitted from it. Xiao Yin hurriedly nodded. From the looks of the situation, this mysterious person seemed to be related to the Xiao clan. Who am I? However, this joy had only surged onto his heart when he felt icy cold because of the skinny man's subsequent words. This elder did not appear to have a clear mind. "You are Xiao Chen, blood-colored axe Xiao Chen." A voice was suddenly transmitted from behind Xiao Yin. That voice was filled with shock. Xiao Yin turned his head. He looked at Gu Nanhai, who had a face filled with disbelief, and asked, "Xiao Chen?" "Xiao Chen!" That skinny man also frowned and muttered to himself, "Elder Gu, are you acquainted with this elder?" Sun Er rushed over and asked in surprise, "I am unacquainted with him. However, I have seen this blood-colored axe in the ancient books." The Xiao clan had produced an outstanding person back then. The weapon that this person was known to use was an extremely large blood-colored axe. That person was called Xiao Chen. Gu Manhai stared at the skinny man and said, "Xiao Chen possessed a shocking talent. He could be considered a cousin of Xiao Xian. However, he did not like to be restrained by anything and was a rather temperamental person. An unknown number of experts perished to his axe before he became renowned. In the end, he disappeared without reason. The Xiao clan was unable to find anything about him regardless of how they searched. It is unexpected that he has actually appeared here." That's right. News of the purifying demonic lotus flame had spread soon after he went missing. Gu Nanhai suddenly exclaimed as he suddenly recalled something. Ancestor Xiao Xian's cousin? Xiao Yin was stunned as he frowned. Putting it this way, this person could also be considered his ancestor. However, he avoided the great calamity of the Xiao clan by being here. It cannot be clearly described as a blessing or a disaster. Gu Nanhai walked to Xiao Yan's side and sighed. Xiao Yin was quiet. He looked at this Xiao Chen, who was an ancestor of the Xiao clan. At this moment, Xiao Chen revealed a struggle on his face. It appeared as though he was resisting something. He is resisting the control of the purifying demonic lotus flame. Gu Nanhai cried out in a low, startled voice after seeing Xiao Chen's face. Xiao Chen held his giant axe while his body continued to tremble. A faint cream-colored flame gradually escaped through his pores. Xiao Yan's expression was slightly astonished upon seeing this. The purifying demonic lotus flame was trying to use some method to get Xiao Chen to obey it once again, but Xiao Yan did not know how he could help at this moment. After all, that demonic flame had formed in Xiao Chen's body. Xiao Yan's hand suddenly rubbed his forehead while he was feeling somewhat helpless. That light cluster within his head emitted a faint fluctuation at this moment. That light cluster, which had suddenly moved, caused Xiao Yin to be startled. He quietly sensed that slight fluctuation. His eyes suddenly flashed with joy a moment later.
Xia Yan Yi.
Sun Er by the side saw Xiao Yin suddenly lift a leg to walk to the trembling Xiao Chen. She involuntarily cried out in a hurried voice. Xiao Yin waved his hand when he heard her exclamation. He quickly walked to Xiao Chen's side and suddenly slapped his hand against Xiao Chen's shoulder. Xiao Chen's trembling body strangely came to a halt after Xiao Yan's hand touched him. The cream-white flame that had surfaced within his body slowly disappeared. Who? Xiao Chen emitted a couple of rough breaths from his mouth. He lifted his head only a moment later and looked at the clan tattoo on Xiao Yan's forehead with a somewhat complicated expression. His voice was hoarse as he asked, "How is the Xiao clan now?" Xiao Yan was quiet. He softly replied, "The Xiao clan no longer exists." He then gave a brief explanation about the current situation of the Xiao clan. Xiao Chen did not open his mouth from the moment Xiao Yan started talking, but blood slowly rolled down his tightly clenched fist. He finally spoke in a trembling voice a long while later. "Even big brother Xiao Xian died." Xiao Yan softly sighed as he looked at Xiao Chen, who was clenching his fist with his head lowered. He was aware that Xiao Chen's heart was filled with a great hatred, but even if he had remained in the Xiao clan, the Xiao clan would not have been able to avoid disaster. The Hun clan was far too powerful. This place is the demonic flame realm. Ancestor Xiao Chen, please bring us to the purifying demonic lotus flame, Xiao Yan softly requested. All of you are no match for the purifying demonic lotus flame. Xiao Chen shook his head. His voice was still hoarse. There is no way to survive even if we continue remaining in this place. Xiao Yan faintly smiled. His eyes flickered with a light. Follow me. Xiao Chen lifted his head. He exchanged a glance with Xiao Yan before he slowly stood up, after which he turned around and headed to the final door. Let's follow. Xiao Yan did not say much. He gently waved his hand and followed. Gu Nanhai opened his mouth but did not say anything. All he could do was follow. Creak. The entire group quietly followed behind Xiao Chen. They watched him slowly push open that door. Behind the large door was a flight of stairs that extended into the distance. At the other end of the stairs was a huge stone dais. Xiao Yan faintly smiled as he glanced at the stone dais at the end. He took the lead to climb the stone stairs and slowly walked to the end. Xiao Chen, Sun Er, and the rest hesitated for a moment before quickly following behind. Everyone was quiet as they climbed the stone stairs. Around 10 minutes later, they finally began to approach the dais. Xiao Yan lifted his head. He could see a huge throne quietly sitting on that altar. A white-robed figure was seated at that spot. Wisps of a cream-white flames lingered around him, morphing into various shapes. This white-robed figure quietly sat. Not the tiniest aura spread from the figure, but that figure appeared extremely strange to Xiao Yan's group. That white-robed figure finally opened his eyes when everyone stepped onto the dais. A smile that caused one to feel a little startled appeared on his face. You will be able to obtain the essence of the demon flame if you defeat me. Otherwise, all of you shall remain here forever and become my fire slaves. His voice was gentle and warm, but it seemed to cause space itself to tremble. Gu Nanhai's group revealed grave expressions as their hearts started to feel defeat. This person in front of them caused them to feel as though he was invincible. Who? The silence continued for a moment before Xiao Yan finally exhaled for a long time. His face contained some fatigue while a low and deep voice slowly sounded. Purifying demonic lotus flame. Looks like you have obtained all of the inheritances of the purifying demonic lotus saint. Otherwise, you would not have been able to practice the nightmare heaven fog to such a level. I must admit that the illusion that you have created is even more real than the Bodhisattva ancient trees illusion. However, regardless of how real an illusion is, it is ultimately an illusion. Xiao Yan's low voice quietly reverberated across the dais. The warm smile on the handsome man's face also gradually stiffened.